Depth psychology tells us about the unconscious. Spirituality tells us about the spirit and the soul. But what happens when these two worlds meet? What if Jung's Red Book and Omraam's Sunrise Meditations are speaking the same language? One in symbols, the other in light. Stay tuned to hear Klaas Laan's take on this fascinating dialogue. Hi, I'm Naika, your host of this third season of Toward a Solar Civilization. Today, we will explore the unconscious. Yes, how great is that? And we will ask a simple question. What if Freud got it wrong? What if the unconscious is not driven by sexuality alone, but by something far greater? A hidden spiritual force that connects us to light, archetypes, and even cosmic consciousness. Klaas Laan will explore how Carl Jung's depth psychology and the teaching of Omraam Mikhaël Aïvanhov open a very different doorway into the human soul. Since he was 20 years old, Klaas has devoted his life to spirituality. Around 1980, he was grasped by Jungian depth psychology, and 25 years ago, he started combining spirituality and depth psychology as a Jungian therapist. Over to you, Klaas.
Thank you, Naika. Do you want to know who you truly are? Prepare yourself, meditate, concentrate on light, like the sun. After some time, you will be ready to penetrate your depths. Because light and dark need each other if you want seriously to widen your consciousness. Dear viewers, one 50-minute lecture would not be justice to the request made to me. The intention is to give more lectures about Jungian therapy and the teaching and the relationship. Let's see if this first one is satisfactory. I will start with the approach to the unconscious, with Jung and Master Aïvanhov explored as a most important theme. To begin with, they share the skepticism about Freud's psychoanalysis. Freud is credited with being the first to incorporate the unconscious into psychology. He was a neurologist and supporter of Darwin's theory of evolution. He built upon this the argument for attributing all human behavior to a sexual theory. That is why he sought the cause of mental illness and neurological disorders in human sexuality. Jung strongly disagreed with him on this point and attached equal importance to spirituality and religion. Jung incorporated all this into what he called the libido, the psychic energy, or rather, the electrical charge that exists between mind and matter in humans and all living beings. Here their paths as researchers of consciousness diverged. Then Jung initiated his alternative, the analytical depth psychology. But let me first cite Omraam Mikhaël Aïvanhov. For years now, I have been instructing you only in the things of the higher spheres, the world of consciousness and light. But in fact, this has been simply to prepare you to penetrate into the depths of your being. For if you want to know yourself as you truly are, you have to know both regions, that which is above as well as that which is below. The unconscious in man, what the Japanese sages call hara, is seated in our belly. But of course, these dark regions are very dangerous, and that is why it is important to begin by exploring the higher ground and only later, when one has become really stalwart, when one has required all the necessary arms and equipment, can one start to go down into the abyss to see what secrets it holds. The death psychology of Jung, with its approach to the unconscious, with the spirit immanent, is, as I see it, in line with the master's teaching. Jung experienced this intentionally during his time as a student in Basel, Switzerland, and unintentionally 15 years later, in the period between 1913 and 1960, when he endured a psychic crisis, which he expressed in his Red Book. In this fantastic account, he described and painted his self-therapy. These personal experiences gave rise to the concept of the collective unconscious, which Jung was able to link to the existential experience and traumas of humanity, which have also shaped cultures and religions. Everything Jung wrote after this period stems from these personal experiences. Master Aïvanhov said, one can only reach the unconscious indirectly, and that is by his way of living. Here he gives an exercise. When meditating, be awake and concentrate on the Hara center while you place both hands on it. Do this in the spirit of purity and harmony, and for the good of humanity and nature. So you create the best conditions to explore the depths of your being without danger. Work first on the things you can access, and then take your time going to the less accessible. Another quote from a daily meditation of Master Aïvanhov. Everything we experience in our consciousness is a reflection of the higher world or the lower world. What we call consciousness may in reality be the expression of the unconscious, the subconscious, or the higher conscious. It all depends on the nature of that which influences and is reflected on the screen of our consciousness. Dark expressions come from the lower unconscious, while light expressions are the reflection of the higher conscious. Our consciousness is a neutral zone, where both good and evil can express themselves. Try to keep them apart. Jung discovered that the alchemy from the Middle Ages till the great physicist Newton, who was also an alchemist, was an attempt to interact with the unconscious. They spoke of the light that comes from darkness. Darkness is infinitely more extensive than light. It encompasses and fills everything. In contrast, light is like a spark, enclosed in darkness. This is how the child is formed in the womb. A death psychologist says, our consciousness does not create itself, but bubbles up from an unknown death. It gradually awakens in the child and awakens every morning from sleep, from the depths of an unconscious state. It is really like a child being born daily from the maternal primal ground of the unconscious. There are many levels of consciousness. Master Aïvanhov makes the following classification. He talks about the unconscious, subconscious, conscious, self-conscious, superconscious, and cosmic consciousness. To clarify, Aïvanhov uses an example to be more concrete. For the unconscious, suppose you bump your head and lose your consciousness, physical. Then for the subconscious, after some time, you come to consciousness and start moving. You are physically present again, but not yet responsive. Then for the conscious, you open your eyes, but do not know what has happened. The will and the senses become active. For the self-conscious, you feel still pain, but you realize now what has happened. The mind becomes active. For the superconscious, at the next stage, you realize how lucky you are and feel grateful. Aïvanhov says you are enter the realm of the soul. Jung describes here an experience of this level when he visits the Athi Plains in Kenya. It is a vast savanna, and from a low hill I had an unparalleled view. As far as the eye could see, I saw huge herds, gazelles, antelopes, zebras, etc. The only thing you could hear was the melancholic cry of a bird of prey. I felt like the first human being to see that this was the world. It was the silence of the eternal beginning, the world as it had always been. Here, says Jung, the cosmic significance of consciousness became overwhelmingly clear to me. Human beings, myself included, gave the world its completion in an invisible act of creation. Without this, creation would be nothing more than a programmed machine, meaningless according to predetermined and established rules. For the level of cosmic consciousness, for the state of cosmic consciousness, you experience ecstasy, a sensation of unity consciousness. That's the realm of the spirit. Master Aïvanhov describes his experience of this state as follows. Years ago, heaven granted me the privilege of experiencing this world of harmony, an eternal realm from which an infinite multitude of forms, colors, sounds, and scents have emerged. I was pulled out of my body and heard the harmony of the spheres. Never before had I experienced such sensation of such richness, such intensity. It was indescribable, almost unbearable. So strong was my feeling of expanding, as if I were merging with space. It was so beautiful, so divine, that it frightened me. I felt that I was in danger of dissolving and disappearing into space. Then I broke out of that ecstasy and returned to earth. Now I regret it.
Alors, mes chers frères et sœurs, la méditation maintenant. Alors, comme il y a des degrés, vous voyez, il y a des degrés. Et maintenant, la méditation, c'est plus que la réflexion. De réfléchir, c'est de s'arrêter sur un sujet, sur une qualité, sur une vertu, sur quelque chose qui vous manque, que vous voulez développer. Ah, ça, c'est la méditation. Et oui, mais pour arriver à vouloir développer telle et telle qualité, telle et telle vertu, par exemple, ou la bonté, ou la générosité, ou la paix, ou la lumière, ou la sagesse, ou l'amour, etc. Il y en a tellement de qualités et de vertus. Il faut avoir cet autre idéal. Il est dit comme ça ici. Et oui, mais qu'est-ce que c'est cet autre idéal? Ah, de vouloir devenir quelque chose de mieux que les gens ordinaires dans le monde qui mangent, qui volent, qui escroquent, qui couchent, qui détruisent, qui sont. De devenir quelque chose de mieux. Ça veut dire plus pur, plus parfait, plus intelligent, plus puissant. C'est un modèle, quoi, un modèle. Ah, si vous n'avez pas maintenant cet idéal de devenir un modèle, de vous perfectionner, jamais vous n'arriverez à méditer. Parce que vous ne serez pas poussé à méditer sur des sujets célestes, divins. Et si vous êtes un homme ordinaire, vous serez obligé de méditer sur des soucis, combien d'argent vous devez payer, pour, n'est-ce pas, pour les vêtements, pour le loyer, pour le gaz, pour l'électricité, etc. Ou alors comment se marier, comment avoir des enfants, ou comment séduire tel et tel. Or, ce n'est pas de méditation. Pourquoi? Parce que vous n'êtes pas poussé vers quelque chose de plus divin, plus céleste. Voilà pourquoi, mes chers frères et sœurs, d'avoir un autre idéal est indispensable. Parce que sans cela, vous n'avez aucune envie de méditer sur les choses célestes, sur les divinités, sur les anges, sur les archanges, sur le ciel, sur la lumière, sur l'espace, sur l'éternité. Tout ça, aucune envie. Et on le voit, les gens n'ont aucune envie. Pourquoi? Ben, ils préfèrent aller jouer aux cartes, ou au football, ou au bistrot, trinquer. Donc, ils n'ont aucun idéal. Parce que s'ils avaient un idéal, ben, ils refuseraient. Ils renonceraient d'aller perdre leur temps stupidement avec des occupations stupides. Voilà pourquoi le haut idéal est indispensable. Et à ce moment-là, quand vous avez besoin, vous voulez maintenant devenir quelque chose de mieux, plus beau, plus expressif, plus pur, pour épater la galerie, même, si vous voulez. Oh, alors, et vous méditez comment devenir, comment se renforcer, comment résoudre tel problème, comment se libérer de certaines entraves. Et c'est ça la méditation. La méditation est basée sur quelque chose de plus spirituel. Quand c'est basé sur des affaires, sur des choses matérielles, ce n'est pas une méditation. Et après, quand vous arrivez maintenant, supposez que vous arrivez maintenant, imaginez la beauté. Vous aimez la beauté partout dans l'univers. Les fleurs, les cristaux, les arbres, et les femmes même les hommes, tout. Les couleurs, tout. Vous êtes tellement émerveillé, tellement dilaté, tellement enchanté, que vous restez après dans cet état d'émerveillement. C'est ça la contemplation. Vous ne méditez plus. Vous êtes arrêté sur une image et vous buvez de l'élixir de la vie mortelle. La contemplation est au-dessus de la méditation. Parce que les sensations que vous avez, ils sont plus supérieures que pendant la méditation. Dans la méditation, il n'y a pas tellement de dilatation, tellement de joie, tellement vous êtes occupé à penser, à imaginer, à résoudre certains problèmes. C'est différent. Mais la contemplation, vous êtes dégagé, vous êtes libre, vous êtes dans la paix et vous réagissez. Et après, si vous voulez aller plus loin, parce qu'il y a des degrés, vous vous arrêtez sur le scénario et vous voulez vous identifier avec lui, devenir comme lui, comme Jésus qui disait, soyez parfaits, comme mon Père Céleste est parfait. Devoir être parfait comme le Père Céleste. De s'identifier. Et maintenant, pour vous montrer combien les humains sont ignorants, je vous donnerai toujours des preuves. Parce que quand je dis quelque chose, moi, j'aime donner des preuves pour ne pas décevoir les frères et les sœurs. Prenez maintenant les humains. Avec quoi ils s'identifient? Ils s'identifient avec leur bourricot, avec leur cheval, avec leur voiture, avec leur corps physique. C'est moi, ils disent. Voilà. Regardez quelle stupidité, quelle ignorance. Ils ne savent pas qu'ils sont un esprit, une âme, quelque chose de pas matériel, quelque chose qui a des pouvoirs, des possibilités inouïes. Ils s'identifient avec le corps physique qui est notre corps pour se manifester, notre bourricot, notre voiture. Pas le chauffeur, c'est pas la voiture. Alors, et quels sont les résultats, les conséquences? Quand ce n'est pas donné au corps physique l'éternité, la jeunesse éternelle, la puissance, la lumière, il s'oxyde, il s'affaiblit, il devient malade, il n'est-ce pas, il fermente, mais il fermente aussi, il s'oxyde aussi, il s'affaiblit aussi, il devient comme le corps physique. Il vieillit, il se refroidit, il devient stupide. Il ne faut jamais s'identifier avec le corps physique. Ce n'est pas nous le corps physique. C'est un instrument seulement pour nous. Et s'identifier maintenant avec votre moi supérieur, qui est une flamme, qui est la même chose que le Seigneur, les résultats sont différents. Oh là là. Et bien, tous les initiés, tous les grands maîtres, ils ont vérifié ça. Ils s'identifient avec leur moi supérieur. Et c'est comme ça que c'était écrit dans le temple de Delphes. Connais-toi toi-même. Parce que les gens ne se connaissent pas. Ils disent, je me connais, je connais toutes mes faiblesses, toutes mes données. Non, c'est pas vous. Vous êtes quelque chose de sublime, de divin, d'extraordinaire. Mais ils ne se connaissent pas. Et c'est pourquoi c'était ajouté, répété. Connais-toi toi-même. Mais ils ne sont pas arrêtés. Même les savants ne sont pas arrêtés là-dessus. Pourquoi se répéter toi-même? Les gens n'ont pas compris ça. Ils le répètent. Ils ne se connaissent pas. Ils s'identifient. Que des choses à révéler, à expliquer aux humains qui se font du mal, qui périclitent. Parce qu'ils ne connaissent pas grand-chose. Mais il faut des années pour ça. Ce n'est pas dans une journée qu'on éclairera le monde. Il y a des choses, depuis 46 ans, qu'est-ce que je vous ai révélé? Hein?
I would like to pay special attention to the causal realm, which is located above the mental and astral levels. The functioning of our thoughts and feelings. Master Aïvanhov calls this the rock and the refuge in our consciousness, but also the world of archetypes. I wish to talk about archetypes in a later lecture. Well, in the time remaining, I would like to give a preview of the topics that, in my view, together form a meaningful addition to the similarities between Carl Gustav Jung and his depth psychology and Omraam Mikhaël Aïvanhov's esoteric philosophy of life. It will be clear that there are also similarities with other important figures in this field, and where I deem it appropriate, I will mention them as well. The second introduction about main principles builds on the motto, "You cannot descend deeper than you have ascended." One of the principles is, that which is above is equal to that which is below, and that which is below is equal to that which is above. Regarding to this first cosmic principle, I refer here to the golden words of that initiate whom many followers mirrored in their research, Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great Hermes. I will reflect on who he might have been and on his legacy, of which the Emerald Tablet is perhaps the most famous. When you consider that his existence and work are shrouded in mystery, but that his texts are quoted by both Jung and Master Aïvanhov, it becomes clear that he must certainly be mentioned here. Hermes Trismegistus, for example, says, and I quote, "Man is a great wonder, a venerable and honorable being. He merges with the nature of God as if he himself were a god. He knows the race of spirits because he knows that he has the same origin as they do. He looks down on that part of human nature in himself that is all too human, but he trusts that part of himself that is divine. Oh, what a happy synthesis man is! He has dealings with the gods because there is something divine in him that is related to them. He looks down from his inner self on that part of himself that makes him an earthly being. Thus, he stands in the best possible place, in the middle between earth and heaven." So for Hermes Trismegistus. Using this profound wisdom, which will seem enigmatic to many of us, both Jung and Aïvanhov continue to build. Jung does so in what he describes as the path of individuation. Aïvanhov does so in what he considers to be initiation, also referred to as the path of perfection, in which the lower nature of man learns to serve his higher nature. I will go then into more detail about this dual nature of man. Throughout the centuries, philosophy and religion have contributed to the human consciousness. Now, mechanistic reason and emotion have become dominant. The disappearance of magic and poetry of our divine side kept pace with the noise and smoke of the Industrial Revolution, which exploited nature and polluted the air. We unfortunately see that economics and politics mainly appeal to the lower astral nature of human being, and that science and technology have overwhelmed our minds. How different, full of possibilities and ideals, humanity's view of reality and coexistence seems to have been just before that. We can read this, for instance, in the masterful confession, the Declaration of Independence. I quote, "that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with inherent and inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's a fantastic quote. Everything is in it for the development of man in his divine sight. But now, no matter how much disenchantment and impoverishment subsequently spread, there have always been pioneers who have preserved the heritage of the science of the initiates. Whereas this used to take place in closed societies, nowadays everything is available to those who seek it through books and on the internet. When it comes to the question of how you can perfect yourself, but also together with those around you, how you can give each other life, freedom, and happiness, we need guides. Just like Hermes Trismegistus, true guides always start from the premise that which is above is equal to that which is below, and that which is below is equal to that which is above. But how mysterious! The second cosmic principle in the second reading is that of the masculine and the feminine, in a similar sense to which Taoism from Lao Tzu speaks of yang and yin. Jung elaborates on this in his description of animus and anima, while Aïvanhov refers to the masculine and feminine in the traditions of Gnosticism, alchemy, and Kabbalah. If humans become fully aware of these two fundamental principles, as above, so below, and masculine and feminine, and learn to work with them, they can handle the contradictions in their lives and thereby accelerate their evolution. They become aware of cosmic laws in relation to their destiny, such as those of affinity, cause and effect, registration, and the law of echo. In the third introduction, we explore the realm of the soul. Imagine that you are in a workshop, that of your consciousness and your body. In this workshop, the student rolls up his or her sleeves and gets to work. No longer just reading a book or having interesting conversations about spirituality, but putting your money where your mouth is. Once you have made the firm decision, you feel called to embark to the path of perfection, your ideals and good intentions will encounter your weaknesses and guilty pleasures. This requires perseverance and concentration on your part while you feel that nothing is happening. Here we discover that we don't really know ourselves, that we understand very little about our lives, while we find ourselves in a labyrinth where everything is happening. Both Jung and Aïvanhov have made important and useful statements here about meditation, imagination, and dreams. Therefore, as a following step, the fourth introduction focuses on what is being built up within. Do you remember from the first introduction that the alchemist said that light is born in darkness, like a child in the womb? With the tools and principles that have been offered so far, one has increasingly become a divine gardener. This means that you have decided to plant a seed within yourself, that you have learned how to let it germinate within you, that you must give it water, food, and above all, light. This plant ultimately produces a spiritual flower, the higher self. Experiencing this is called the second birth, which you can imagine or even experience as a sunrise within yourself. Now it is about giving the spirit all the space it needs, that we learn to experience what freedom and truth mean and what space means. I will talk here about archetypes, synchronicity, intuition, and some other things. I look forward to seeing you the next time. For feedback or questions, you can contact me on laancoach@euronet.nl. Thank you.
Wow, there are so many take-home messages here for me. From one, how Jung and Omraam rejected Freud's focus on sexuality, seeing spirituality and psychic energy as equally vital. That Jung emphasized both the personal and collective unconscious, using active imagination and symbolism before entering darker depths. The importance of Omraam teaching us to meditate on the Hara Center and at sunrise as safe ways to deepen awareness and ground spiritual practice. That growth comes from harmonizing individuality or a higher nature with personality or our lower nature, reconnecting to the divine source. How useful it is to have a strong inner anchor built through mindfulness and purity, keeping balance and ensuring steady spiritual progress. But perhaps most important of all, how the unconscious relates to the cosmic, how each level marks an expansion of awareness towards unity and spiritual ecstasy. If you've enjoyed this episode, please stay tuned for our next and final episode in this series, where Anatole will be interviewing several brothers and sisters from England and elsewhere. See you in 2 weeks. Stay safe and stay connected.